My Bitcoin prediction model just flashed something huge. It predicts Bitcoin hits an insane 117,000 within the next 14 days. And the craziest part about this is typically the exact kind of setup you see before some of Bitcoin's most insane rallies. And right now, some experts are calling for Bitcoin to go to 200,000, 500,000, and some are calling for $1 million per Bitcoin before the end of the year. Stick around and I'll show you exactly what this AI model sees, the exact data points that it's actually flagging as to why we're going to hit $117,000 in the next 14 days, why I have so much conviction in this model and what it's predicting that I took the rest of my house money. Remember, I sold my entire house to invest into crypto back when Bitcoin was $79,000. And I threw it into a bunch of tokens when we were sitting at those lower levels. And now I've thrown the rest of it into Bitcoin because of this prediction and where I believe we're going next. So I'll explain exactly why I did that, and ultimately what this means for crypto going into summer and kind of where I expect crypto to land by July. So this 2-week Bitcoin prediction model is based off of my 60-day Bitcoin prediction model. My 60-day Bitcoin prediction model I ran back in March, and it was able to accurately predict the price of Bitcoin all the way in May, like literally to the day. So it got the exact price that Bitcoin was going to be on May 8th, 2025. And I did an entire video on that model and exactly what it's predicting over the next 60 days if you want to go watch that. But I used that model as a starting point to build out this Bitcoin 2-week prediction model. And it was actually insanely hard to take that longer 2-month Bitcoin model and turn it into a 2-week Bitcoin model. I ended up having to pay over $10,000 just to be able to get access to enough high quality data to build this initial 2-week model. And this 2-week model uses over 150 daily inputs, including price momentum, ETF flows, funding, open interest, stablecoin flows, macro data, global liquidity, and a ton more. And I say all that just to show that I put a lot of work into these models. They're not just like some hodgepodge, me prompting into Grok like, hey, what's Bitcoin going to do in 2 weeks? I have spent hundreds of hours building out these models, and they basically just leverage the same principles that you're hearing on YouTube, X, etc., where somebody's like, oh, we're above the 2-week moving average, and this means this, or oh, Bitcoin's got a golden cross, and that means that. I mean, you hear people say these things on X, and those are just singular data points. That's people basing a prediction around what Bitcoin will do next based off one single, thing. And my view has been that the more of those single data points that you can bring together to build a full comprehensive picture of everything, the more accurate of a prediction you're going to ultimately be able to get. Anyways, like I was saying, I built out this Bitcoin 2-week model and I ran it last Friday. So today's Monday, the day that this video is getting released. I ran the model on Friday. At the time, Bitcoin was sitting at around $103,000. We were just scooting up against all-time highs. And I honestly just wasn't sure where we were going to go from there. There's a lot of times when we get to all-time high price levels that we kind of touch those levels and then head back down and retest the bottom. And I was a little bit nervous that was going to happen. I was looking to reinvest the rest of my house money, but I wasn't sure if it was a good time or not, given that, there was seemingly a high likelihood that we could actually go lower, given we were, just touching all-time highs almost. But when I ran the 2-week model on Friday, it said that we would hit $117,000 per Bitcoin by May 30th. And personally, when I first saw the prediction, I almost didn't share it because I thought it was so crazy. I just didn't think it was even possible we could hit $117,000 in the next 2 weeks. In the next 2 months, sure, that seems completely reasonable and possible, but in the next 2 weeks, that seems really aggressive. But after I saw why it was predicting we would hit 117,000 in the next 2 weeks, I became so convinced that it was at least directionally correct that I ended up investing almost the entire rest of my house money into the market. First off, the model identified that the Fed injected around $42 billion worth of liquidity into the banking system over the last 5 days. If you've been following my channel for a while, or if you've been studying Bitcoin for a while, you know that Bitcoin is hyper reflexive to changes in liquidity. If liquidity is increased, Bitcoin goes up. If liquidity is withdrawn from the global financial system, Bitcoin goes down. And basically this impulse in liquidity comes from the Fed's overnight reverse repo facility draining about $5 billion, which is a small bump in liquidity. And on top of that, the Fed expanded their balance sheet by about $37 billion over those 5 days as well, which is just another way of saying they injected about $37 billion worth of liquidity into the financial markets. The second thing that the model identified is that ETF flows are trending up, and that's another source of crypto-specific liquidity that the crypto market is tapping into. And we know from 2024 that ETF liquidity spikes into Bitcoin can actually have a pretty massive impact on Bitcoin's price. You have to remember that crypto as an entirety, like the entire crypto space, is just $3 trillion in market cap, where the global financial system, like the global amount of liquidity slushing around, is over $400 trillion. And also, what a lot of people don't understand when it comes to Bitcoin price movements based on ETF flows is the float, or the available supply of Bitcoin to actually buy versus the total supply. A lot of people do the math just based on Bitcoin's total market cap and be like, okay, if we had this amount of flows into Bitcoin, it would push up the price by this amount. But that's not actually how it works. There's actually a scarce amount of Bitcoin available for sale, meaning just a small amount of buying pressure can push up Bitcoin's price a lot more than people expect. And based on current supply float available on exchanges, if the Bitcoin ETF flows were just to hit parity with gold ETF flows cumulatively by the end of the year, by December 31st, that would put the price of Bitcoin at around 175,000. And if Bitcoin were to hit around 4 trillion in total flows, that would put the price at around $1.3 million per Bitcoin. Granted, that's a substantial amount of money flowing into Bitcoin. $4 trillion is like a lot of money. Still, in the grand scheme of things, that would only put Bitcoin at around 1% of total global financial assets. So the idea that Bitcoin could capture 1% of total global financial assets does actually seem reasonable given enough time. The point is that ETF flows can actually have an outsized effect on pushing Bitcoin's price up because of this low float scenario. The third reason that the model identified that Bitcoin was primed to go up over the next 2 weeks is that leverage actually got flushed out of the market. And at $103,000 per Bitcoin, we were sitting at extremely low leverage. This is really important because leverage is a form of liquidity. When people take out leverage to invest into Bitcoin, that is a form of money creation and liquidity getting injected into Bitcoin's price, pushing it higher. So when there's a high amount of leverage in Bitcoin, when a lot of the Bitcoin growth is from leverage, that makes it a lot more shaky because a lot of that leverage can get liquidated. People are a little bit more risk adverse when they're sitting on a lot of leverage. They're a lot more likely to sell given any sort of price weakness. And it means that those same people can't take out a bunch of leverage to push up Bitcoin's price even higher, especially during like a bull run when we're sitting at max leverage levels. That just means there's not a lot of ammo left to push the price higher. And given that we had leverage flushed out of the system, that meant that there was a lot of ammo sitting on the sidelines that could push Bitcoin's price substantially higher. The fourth reason the model gave was that Bitcoin's price was bouncing off of the 50-day moving average. And that would mean that trend traders and the different algorithms that trade on Bitcoin's price would be prompted to add risk back in, therefore, potentially pushing Bitcoin's price up. The fifth reason that it identified was that stable coins on exchanges had just jumped up, meaning there was a lot of, again, liquidity or fresh capital ready to flow into Bitcoin's price at the drop of a dime. And the last thing that it identified was that there was no red flags. There was no kind of negative overhang or issue that it was worried about. Everything was free and clear. You had all of these pro-liquidity mechanisms ready to jump into Bitcoin's price. And overall, that pointed to Bitcoin's price going higher, not lower, with an estimation of around 117,000. Although, again, I would use that more as a temperature gauge rather than like an exact price point to, be expecting. And it's actually pretty rare to have none of those red flags. That's not a normal thing for the model to see, which lends a lot more credibility to this 2-week model pointing higher. Now, during backtesting, this model for 2025 directionally has backtested 100% correct, meaning directionally when it comes to like making a 2-week call and saying it's going to go higher or lower, so far, which we haven't finished the year, but so far it's been 100% correct. And obviously 2025 isn't over. I don't expect it to finish 2025 with 100% accuracy. That would be absurd. But it is incredibly impressive that so far, even during the tariff madness, it was able to correctly navigate those 2-week periods. Overall, though, a model like this, a 2-week model, is extremely hard to do. There's a lot of noise, in any given 2 weeks. A lot of things could shake out Bitcoin's price over a 2-week period. So again, I really want to emphasize this. There's no way this thing will have 100% accuracy over the rest of 2025. It will make mistakes. It won't always be right. But even if I could get it, around 80% right or 70% right, that's a massive tool and a really powerful indicator in my tool belt, allowing me to guess, is this an optimal time to put money into the market or is it not? And on average, when it comes to its like exact dollar amount predictions, this model is off around $5,900. Meaning, even though it's predicting 117, it could technically be 111, or it could technically be 123. Now, I'm sure some of you guys are wondering who've watched my 60-day model prediction video, how this fits in with the 60-day model's prediction, which was around $119,000 by July. So the 60-day model was predicting Bitcoin would hit around 119,000 by July. This model is predicting in the next 2 weeks, Bitcoin hits around 117,000. How do those two things mesh up? And honestly, I don't know. These models both use really good data. These models are both really well built. It does feel like to me, if we hit the $117,000 in the next 2 weeks, that the 60-day model is aiming really low. But maybe we run up, a lot higher. Maybe we go all the way up to 130,000 or 40,000. I don't know, and then trace back down to 119,000 during that time period. There's a lot of ways that could end up working out. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to go above 119,000 before that 60-day period. I don't really know what it means, and I don't even know if that's accurate. Again, that 60-day model has been correct once. I've run that model, forward testing one time. And so I have to test it a lot more to see, if over the long term, it will be correct, pretty consistently. And the same thing goes with this 2-week model. Although, it does kind of feel like this 2-week model is on the right track, because we did over the weekend break past 103,000, almost make it to 107,000. We set a new all-time high for Bitcoin. So it does feel like the model is directionally accurate, and we are heading somewhere in the zone that it seems to be predicting. But these models are indicators or temperature gauges to give you maybe a feel of where we might be headed. My hope is that these models are better than the single indicators that maybe you see on X and YouTube, where again, somebody's saying, oh, it's a golden cross. Look at this TA and look what it's saying. That suggests Bitcoin's going to do this. My hope is that this model would be far superior to things like that. But not that it would be perfect. Lastly, in the next couple weeks, I'm going to be doing an update on what my altcoin model is currently saying. Which, if you think $117,000 in 2 weeks is crazy, what this model is saying is absurd. And I'm going to be doing an update on that in the next couple weeks. And if you want to see more consistent updates when it comes to my prediction models, when it comes to my macro dashboards, when it comes to buy and sell alerts, when I buy or sell various different tokens, I share all of that plus weekly video market updates on the market state and what's happening in the Obsidian Council. Currently, it's closed to new members. There are no open spots, but if you want to jump on the waitlist, you can join next time it opens back up. As always, none of this is investment advice. I am obviously not your financial advisor, and you should always do your own research. And if you want to see more videos like this, including my alt date update coming out in the next couple of weeks, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the little bell next to it to be notified each time I release a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.